No, I want to hear more about what's going on with. So, you're born November 23rd, 1935,
In my
in
grandfather's
between
house,
Altamont and
Winston.
Winston, Missouri, in your grandfather's house. And Uncle CW lived in the house with y'all?
Not there. We didn't live in that house very long.
Oh, okay.
We just lived there. I was just born there. And I was born, and then we moved into a little house about, I don't know, about a mile and a half from there, I guess. And it was a little two-room house out in a big field, or out in a big area we had. And I don't know how many acres they had there, but anyway, I'm not sure who owned it either. I think maybe it belonged to my grandfather. But it was a cute little house, and we didn't have any problem about being small. I don't remember that there was ever anything said about the house being small.
Mm-hmm. There's just 2 rooms?
Just 2 rooms, kitchen and a bedroom. And I suppose the kitchen was pretty big, but my mother and I did spend time there, I remember, because we made fudge together, and I think she mostly did the fudge making. But we poured it out into a plate, and she says, now you have to save some for CW. And so I said, okay. So I cut it in half on the plate, and they ate half of it. And he didn't come home yet. So I said, I cut it in half again. I wanted half of that. Anyway, he didn't have but just one little tiny piece of fudge when he got home. And of course, he wasn't very happy about that, and I felt bad. But we made a few more times of fudge throughout the year. And he didn't fuss about that too much. But again, he teased me a lot, and when I got a goldfish when I was about, I don't know how old I was, 7 or 8, I suppose. And I don't know, maybe not that soon. But anyway, when he joined the Army and enlisted freely, but he was only 17 years old, and he lied about his age and got in. So he went to California. We moved to Kansas City at that time when he went into the Army.
Oh, that's when you moved to Kansas City, was when CW went in the Army. So you were like 8 or 9.
I was like 6.
Or 6 or 7.
5, let's see. I went to school in 1940 at the age of 5. I got that first year in there at Altamont. And we lived in a house right in Altamont, and it was a place where I could walk up and down the streets and not ever be afraid. And my parents let me roam the whole town. I always told them where I was going. There was a man and woman that I called Uncle Rose and Aunt Rose and Uncle somebody. Aunt Rose and Uncle, I don't know what his name was anymore. And I'd go up to their house, which was close to town, and town only consisted of a grocery store and another store was up there, and we had free movies every Saturday, I think it was, mostly. We didn't have it every Saturday because I know we didn't get to go sometimes because there wasn't a movie that night.
Right.
So. And I remember that it was a screen outside. We took blankets and sat on the concrete that was up there and watched the movie that way. And it was very interesting, and most of the people in the town were there to watch the movie. I don't remember any of the movies, just right offhand. But it was pretty good. We'd go up there every time they had one, I think. And generally it was on a Friday night.
It's just a bird.
Sounds so strange.
So, so you moved to Kansas City when Uncle CW, at about the same time he went off to war.
Mm-hmm. My dad got a job with the railroad.
He went to California to camp, which camp?
Boot camp there, I don't know which camp.
Embleton or something, who knows. And then, so was that a total shock, living in the big city all of a sudden?
Yes, it was a big shock.
Yeah.
I started second grade there. I was the youngest in the class probably. And I didn't have the right kind of pencil. And the teacher loaned me one, but I went home all upset because I didn't have a big fat pencil like they were using. And then I used it and I thought, oh gosh, I don't like this big fat pencil. Anyway, went home that night. Of course, my mother took me to get a big fat pencil. And went back the next day and I was okay with that. And my first teacher there was Mrs. Murphy, I believe. I don't believe that was right. Anyway, I had Mrs. Cunningham the next year.
Mm-hmm.
She was a real nice lady.
You remember the name of your school?
Mm-hmm. It was Scarrett School in
Scarrett?
Kansas City. It was on
Scarrett School. You know how to spell that?
Scarrett, S-C-A-R-R-I-T-T.
Okay, S-C-A-R-R-I-T-T. Gotcha.
And then I went there half a year. No, I went there a year and a half. Went there for my second and half my third grade. Then in the middle of my third grade year, we moved over on Jackson Street. We were living in a 2-room apartment up there across from Scarrett School. And it was okay. We were comfortable and nothing big was wrong with it. And that's where we lived when we had a lot of air raid warnings.
Mm-hmm.
And at that school, I collected net newspapers and cans of fat for the war. And we took them to school, and then they would take them to wherever they needed to be.
Like cans of fat from cooking,
Mhm.
basically? Okay.
And that's where we lived when they had air raid warnings, and the sirens would go off, and you were supposed to black your house out. You had to black out your windows and anything, so no lights were shining. You had to either get rid of the light yourself or black it out with the windows. And that was pretty exciting. In that apartment, we didn't have a refrigerator, and we didn't have an ice box. We had a shelf on the window outside, and we put our milk and things that had to be kept cold.
So what'd you do in the summer?
In the summer, we got ice
Oh,
we got an ice box then after we lived there a little while. The first place we lived in Kansas City was over on Benton Boulevard, and our landlord there was a Mrs. Oh, I said it in my mind, and now I've lost it. Mrs. Rogue. And she and my dad didn't get along after the first week or so because she didn't want to do the things that we needed to have done. She didn't want to heat in the apartment all the time. And my dad and she got into an argument about that. And anyway, then she brought a bucket of water and threw it on him. And then he got a big pan of water and threw it back on her. And then we moved out shortly after that.
I guess. Wow.
I don't know that she moved us out because we paid her rent on time, and we're gonna be good rent payers because my dad was working for the railroad.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we moved to Mrs. Brown's house, and it was right across the street from Scarrett School. And so I went to there until my third grade year. In the middle of the third grade year, we moved over on Jackson Street into a house for $30 a month. It had a living room across the front of the house, which we closed off in the wintertime. And then they had a dining room and a kitchen and 2 bedrooms. So it was a lot more comfortable to be in the house. And we paid $30 a month rent. And then after a couple, 3 years, I don't know, just, let's see, I'll think about it for a minute. We moved into the house, into that first house in the 3rd grade. And it was on Jackson Street, and it was 932 Jackson Street,
Kansas City.
Kansas City.
Okay.
And I walked to school that year by myself, and it was about almost a mile that I walked. And there was a little boy on that street as I walked along, and his dog had puppies, and they put it in a big jar and put in, anyway, they made him, put him to sleep.
Oh.
And put him in had a big jar, and he was carrying around it. It had some kind of liquid in it to keep him from,
Yeah, like
smelling.
formaldehyde or something.
yeah, formaldehyde is what I'm thinking about. Anyway, this little boy said, "These are my puppies, I killed them." And I was so angry, and I couldn't stand to look at it, and I cried on the way to school. But I didn't want him to see me cry. Anyway, I was a very tender-hearted little girl. Oh, when I was back 3 years old, when I lived on the farm,
Mm-hmm.
they had a pig. I had a little pig, and he died. So my mother and dad took me in for a little ride, and they thought they'd just take the pig out and throw it in the field. So we went out on a little ride, and they threw him out. Nobody thought I'd say anything. And I said, "You gotta go back and get my pig." They had to go back and get the pig before I got all excited about it. So eventually they went home. They took the pig back home, laid it out on the ground somewhere. And I got past that pretty much. So they took it out with me again. They couldn't leave me at home because I wasn't too old enough. And took the pig out again, and this time they didn't tell me when they were going to throw it out. They just casually dumped it out the door. And I didn't see it, so I guess it was all right. I guess I didn't fuss anymore about it, but anyway. It had maybe 2 or 3 trips. If I saw them, I wanted to pick them back. And I was only about 2 years old, or maybe just learning to talk. But anyway, it was a good life.
So were you,
Lived for there for a while.
do what?
We lived there for a while, but not too long, because then I went when I was about 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I had to be about 4. We bought a filling station, and it was just down the road, 2 or 3 miles, I don't know, where the intersection was of 69 and 13.
Mm-hmm.
And we bought a filling station. It was at that intersection. I had a little black hen. Stupid hen went out in the road and got hit by a car.
Oh.
She could fly some, just temporarily. Anyway, she got hit by a car, and it didn't bruise her up bad. So my parents got her. We're not wealthy people by any means. And they put the chicken in because it wasn't really bruised or anything. They cut it up like chickens
Mm-hmm.
and fried it.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't eat any of it. I couldn't eat any of it. It was my old black hen. I cried when she died. Because they fixed it to eat for supper, but I never ate a bit of it.
Probably missed out on some good eating there.
Probably was, really. Anyway, then we lived in the filling station for quite a while, and there was a man named D. Sage that walked down to the filling station every day. And I became real good friends with him because he was nice to me, and I was nice to him. We sit and talk a little bit, not too much, but anyway, at today's age, I suppose that they would think that he was probably checking me out for whatever reasons they check school kids out. But he was real nice, and he always would buy me a candy bar or something, and then he would eat one too. I think my dad probably didn't even charge him for one, actually. But I don't know that.
So going to grade school and high school, what were your favorite subjects in school? What were you good at? What were you bad at?
Oh, I was
How
good
was
at
school?
everything in first grade.
Yeah.
I was the only girl in a class of 6. And that was kind of fun to be. Anyway, see, Debbie went to the same school I did. It was from 1 through high school. And I was in a room with first and second graders.
Mm-hmm.
And I could read before I went to school.
Most of the
could-
kids couldn't?
No,
Yeah.
there was no kindergarten. And as I started to say, well, I was in a class of 6 kids. 5 of them were boys and me.
So did they pick on you a bunch, or did they protect
No.
you, or what'd they do?
They didn't, they boyfriended me a little bit,
Nah.
and I was afraid of him a little bit.
Yeah.
And anyway, we had first and second grade, and then there was a third and fourth grade route. So on up through the high schools, and the high schools, I don't know how they operated, but probably all of them in the same room, maybe. But CW was the same school I did. And I was really pretty sheltered most of my life. Later in life, I really didn't like being sheltered as much as I was. But anyway, second grade, when I went down to Kansas City, went in and I had the wrong pencil, and I told you all that part of it a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
In third grade, moved over to Whittier School. because
Whittier?
We bought a house.
Uh-huh.
And the house we bought for $5,000. And it still took us about, well, it took until I was 10 years old, because at 10, we moved over to a school we moved over to the same school, except we lived at 715 Monroe, and I had to cross 9th Street, and 9th Street was a very busy street. So first I couldn't walk to school without my mother walking up with me and crossing me over, taking me over to 9th Street. And I was really embarrassed about that, because I started third grade up there. I was big enough to want to be a little bit on my own. Anyway, I guess so I could cross 9th Street by myself. She showed me how, and went with me for quite a while, and then she let me go by myself. We moved over onto Monroe, at that time 715 Monroe. Back when I lived on Jackson Street, 932 Jackson. I had friends over there on Jackson Street, but one of them was Bernard Davenport, and the other was Mike Higgins. And their mother had some kind of a sale, some kind of a selling party, where you do.
Like Tupperware,
Yeah,
but not
Tupperware.
Tupperware, before that.
Yeah, I think it was Stanley stuff at that time.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was, I don't know what it was, but anyway, I had to go with my mother, and Bernard and Mike were both there, and there weren't any girls there from the neighborhood. So we went into the bedroom to play while they were out in the front room having the party, and we got Mike's mother's. We had food, and so we got into Mike's mother's. Of course, she kept her fancy napkins. We got them out and ate with them.
Did you hurt them?
Well, she had to wash them and do.
Just got them all dirty. Yeah.
But anyway, it was pretty funny. But those boys and I got in more trouble than you'll ever know. After that, we put the napkins into the bed so she couldn't find them because we got them out. She hadn't asked. Anyway, later I asked her about them, and she said, "Oh, they were just washed them, and I put them back in the drawer." That was all she ever said to us. Then these same boys and I went over, and there was a couple of named Stanley. Her last name was Stanley. And I don't know how come we did this, but we went over and threw rocks at their dog. Oh, I hate those little things.
Yeah, sorry. I may have to go inside.
No, we're all right. Anyway, we were over there one afternoon, and I don't even know why we did it. We liked the dog, but he came out and was barking at us, and we got up on the porch and stood at the railings. And he would come out from under the porch because he was afraid of us.
Mm-hmm.
Come out of the porch and look up and see if we're there, and bark. We'd throw rocks at him, and he'd go back under the porch.
Poor dog.
And that went on for a little while, and then suddenly the banister, the porch, gave way, and the banister fell off, and we fell off because we were all leaning on it so much, and then we had to go home. And I went crying home. She walked home and was crying about my falling off the banister, falling on the banister. And of course, that meant that somebody had to go fix that banister. Well, my dad made me go down and tell him that we were out there playing, and we were throwing rocks at their dog,
And broke their banister.
they didn't get too excited about it, but they did say, well, I don't know what they said. I don't remember them ever saying anything particularly harsh to us, but I got a paddling when I got home. And my mother said, "Why were you throwing rocks at the dog?" And I said, "I don't know." And she says, "Well, it's even worse when you don't even know. That was hard on the dogs. It was mean to the dogs. And you won't go back out there again, but you will go down right now and apologize to the Stanleys." So I went down, and Mike and Barnard went to me too, because their mothers were equally upset about things like that.
Yeah.
And so we went down and apologized, told we wouldn't do it anymore. So that was the end of that. And trying to think what we did next that we got in trouble. Maybe that was everything, because we were raised pretty much the same. Now, there were other kids in the neighborhood that weren't.
Mm-hmm.
Patsy Aches was my girlfriend, and that was polio season time, and we had to be kept apart from other kids, but they would let me go up to Patsy's because she hadn't been anywhere to contact, to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Because her parents were very, very careful with her. So that was the only person I had to play with, and I'd go up to her house, and she'd come to my house sometimes.
Did you know kids that got polio?
No.
No, that's
Not
good.
that I can remember anyway.
Yeah.
I heard about kids, and I heard about the iron lung.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know anyone who had it, because I had been positively shut off from the world as far as that was concerned.
Right.
Just Patsy Aches' house I went there, and my own house, and that was about it.
So what did y'all eat for supper on a typical evening?
Don't you mean
What was just your everyday meals? What was that like?
about like it is now?
So you'd have meatloaf or
We had ice cream, not ice cream, fried chicken's what I meant to say.
fried chicken, meatloaf,
And,
spaghetti,
yeah, and cube steak. We had
Pizza?
cube steak. No, pizza wasn't.
probably
around.
not back then.
No, because I didn't even know what pizza was until Daryl was in the service, and the first pizza we had was when we went to California. We were on a pier, and it didn't even let you have a plate or anything. They just gave it to you wrapped up in a roll, and that's the way you ate your pizza. Anyway, we went to that pier and got pizza there. I didn't meet Daryl till I was just out of high school. I guess.
You weren't in school when you met him?
No,
No. Okay.
I was.
You'd already graduated.
Yeah, I met him at a party.
Ah. What kind of party? Like a birthday party or?
No. I don't think it was a party after all. I met him because Lorena knew him first, and Lorena and I worked together at Montgomery Ward. And we met him. She introduced me to him, and then she took me to church with her, which is why I got started to the RLDS church.
Oh, so you were going to the RLDS church before you actually were dating him?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
That was my option. Was dating him, well, I wasn't dating him, but I went to his house for dinner several times, and then we began dating. And the reason we went to Pat's house for dinner is because his mother would invite, or Daryl would ask if he could invite us to dinner, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And his mother said yes, and they always had a kind of a Sunday meal, which was, sometimes fried chicken, sometimes meatloaf. And she always had enough for two more girls, really. Anyway, ghosts in there.
Yep. So you met him after high school. How long did you date before he
I
proposed?
graduated in '53, and we dated, and he wrote letters back and forth. In 1955, we got married.
So
No, it
almost
was
2 years.
Yeah. And he wasn't home all that time,
Yeah.
because part of it was in California.
He was in the military,
He was in the Air Force,
in the Air Force at that time. Yeah.
but he was at Hewlett Packard. No, it wasn't Hewlett Packard. I guess it was California, and he went to learn about building air rockets,
Mm-hmm.
missiles. I can't remember where he went, what the name of the place was where he went.
Jet Propulsion Lab?
What?
The Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or no? Not
No,
JPL?
I don't think so. It was some name that I should know, but it wasn't Hewlett Packard.
Lockheed Martin, I don't know.
I should know it.
So when you guys got married, was he still in the Air Force
Still was in the Air Force.
at that point? Yeah.
We bought a little $1,300 aluminum trailer with a kitchen and living room in it. It was a regular live-in trailer. I mean, that was not real shabby, but it was only we paid $1,300, what my dad paid $1,300 for it. We took it to Colorado, and we needed to live on base because that was where they did what.
That was in Denver?
Uh-huh.
At whatever that Air Force Base is.
Yeah, Lowry.
Lowry Air Force Base, okay, yeah.
And we lived, the trailer park was here, just right up to the road that went this way around the airport.
Mm-hmm.
And the jets were loud.
I'm sure.
Every time we
I'm
went through,
sure,
it felt like the
especially
whole
on a trailer.
place. Yeah. And then Kathy was born 11 months after we got married. And we didn't have a bed because there was no room to put a bed. But in the bedroom, we just built a little shelf. She slept on the little shelf at the foot of our bed.
Oh, wow.
And it was convenient. She liked that. She was with us, but she wasn't with us, you know. And we took her every place we went. We didn't. If she didn't go, we didn't go. Because there was no babysitters anyway.
Right.
And then I wanted to go to work, and I went to work, and she just stayed up at. Oh shoot. Anyway, she stayed next door to us with these people.
So another trailer, basically?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody else's trailers were larger than ours.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some were not much larger. Some were a whole lot larger. And the people next door to us were allies or something. I don't know how it was. What is that running?